actually don't even need a mic. But can everybody hear me all right? Okay, wonderful to be with everyone tonight. I want to ask a question. How many of you voted in the last election? Wonderful. How many of you made a little extra effort and tried to talk to somebody to get them to vote? Fabulous. How many of you actually got on telephones or contributed in some way beyond just, you know, your social engagements and so on? Raise your hands. I want everyone to stand up and shake the hand of the person next to you and thank them for being active in what we're doing. Okay? No, I do it. Yeah. Stand up. Say thank you to the person next to Okay, that's we're going to get a bigger group up here. So. Now let me tell you why the way I opened this up is so important. First of all, we are in a war, and this war has been going on for 100 years. It's a very, very real war. And the people we're fighting against, they're very, very good tacticians. They're very, very well organized. And unfortunately, our side has been pretty naive. Okay, and I'm going to be dead honest with you. How many of you guys like to hunt? I love to hunt. I love to bird hunt. I actually have a Korean M1 that I can hunt with, and I have an oversized magazine for it. It's a hard but I love to bird hunt. You know, I've got 2 dogs that I bird hunt with, and as you know, there's a big difference between hunting with a rifle and hunting with a shotgun, right? So shotgun, I like. My dogs are flushers, they're not pointers. You know the difference between a pointer and a flusher? That pointer will get there and they'll find the bird and they'll go into the set and they'll sit there until I have to go up and kick the darn bird to get it to go up. My flusher, he understands he's got to get the bird up and then, you know, not too far away to bring the bird. And I use a shotgun because birds fly pretty fast. Now that's different from how you hunt with a rifle, right? With a rifle, you have a sight, you have a certain range. And my goodness, I mean, great snipers today can hit targets at a mile. It's incredible, right? But unfortunately, what our movement has been trying to do is kill like a sniper with a shotgun. And it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And you know, how did I get involved with this? I got very, very concerned. My early years, I actually, I'm still married to my college sweetheart. She's German, I'm Greek. It's fire and ice, figure it out. So we dated and fought for about 5.5 years. Then we got married, we fought for 6 more, it's been great since then. But have three kids, got grandchildren and so on, they're all over the country, they're not up here in the frozen tundra anymore. But when we got out of college, she went on, I worked and she went to law school, became an attorney. And then she worked and I went to graduate school. And I did work in international relations, you know what that is? I'm destined to become a bureaucrat. And community development. I learned how to create cities and communities. And so when we came out of college, she had an offer to go to work either for the National Labor Relations Board. She didn't like that, that was the union guys. She could work for the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. She was interested in that. Or she had the opportunity to practice constitutional law under a 29-year-old attorney who had been voted 4 times by the Supreme Court. That's what she picked. And she got the office where the Ku Klux Klan blew out the windows in her office. Okay? And they used sniper rifles. Okay. I, meanwhile, wound up becoming a think tank facilitator for healthcare reform in rural America. And let me tell you, back then, it was nothing at all like healthcare reform here. I mean, what we worked on, you know what a nurse practitioner is? Okay, so we worked on creating nurse practitioners. We created the helicopter lifts for communities that didn't have all the fancy equipment so that people could get broader access. So we did a lot of good stuff. And then we decided to have a family, and we determined we did not want to become Washington bureaucrats. So we went into the private sector. And because we wanted the lifestyle with our kids a little bit, we were blessed. We bought some acreage in Wisconsin. I never, ever became a Green Bay Packer fan. My wife was on the IDS Mutual Fund Board of Directors when it was an independent board from '89 to '91. And Wheelock Whitney, who was an owner of the Vikings, was on the board. And so I got to go to the social events as a token husband. It was great. And she would say, "You're the trophy husband." I said, "No, I've seen the trophy wives. I'm 20 years too old. I'm the token husband." But I was at dinner with Wheelock, and it was just before the Vikings were going to play Green Bay, right? So Wheelock, this was 1987, Wheelock is sitting there, and he's saying, "What do you think about the game tonight?" I said, "Oh, it's really, really good." He said, "Do you know who's playing?" I said, "Of course I do. You know, it's the Packers against the Vikings. Who are you cheering for?" I said, "Let me tell you, anytime the Packers play against the Vikings, I'm for the Vikings." He says, "You're kidding." I said, "No, absolutely not. Anytime the Packers play against the Vikings, I'm for the Vikings." He said, "Didn't you move here from Wisconsin?" I said, "Yes. But I grew up in Chicago. When the Bears get here, they're going to kick your butt." And of course, that was right after the year that the Bears had the big team. So we wound up basically going into the private sector after a while. But I've always understood how politics and economics and so on work. We actually came up here because I was asked to fix a broken acquisition that one of the big Fortune 100s in town had made. It wasn't working, and I was able to fix it. In about 2 years, 2.25 years, moved him from losing $47 million a year and $500 million of revenue to making $57 million a year on a little more than $500 million in revenue. And the parent, and I was very graciously rewarded. I had a leveraged income, and the performance was great. And the parents of the division were so happy they sold the division, who was then asked not to come along to the new owner. Right? No good deed goes unpunished. So I decided to move towards helping smaller and mid-sized businesses. But I learned so much in those years between what I understood about how international economic systems and how governments work and how you build cities and communities, and then applying that to how multinational corporations work, and then getting really right down to working with real folk, where in 1991 I started to help small and mid-sized businesses. And I've written a couple of books, I've written for magazines, just lots of things. That I got very, very involved in helping people like us, just regular folk. How do you make your business thrive? How do you make it prosper? And I even know what was going on with the government, so I could know in advance when things were going to turn in a certain direction to protect my clients and regular people. And then Obama got elected. And I got terrified. Because, how do I explain this? I was in Greece when the junta took over. I was in Venezuela when the junta took over, and they shot first and asked questions later if you were out after dark. I was on a flight in Europe, flying in, this was 1987, it was 2 weeks before Yugoslavia erupted into that civil war, and our plane was brought down in Zagreb because we had an Albanian terrorist on the plane. And I couldn't get out for several days. And I had literally the guys in the fedoras and the trench coats following me around. There's nothing to do. There was no public stores. If you've ever seen a black and white photograph, the behind the curtain was like walking around in a black and white photograph. Just horrible. My friends wouldn't travel with me internationally for quite a while. Okay? So I have I had a fairly good understanding of what was going to be happening to us, and I got very, very frightened. And so a bunch of people started to come over to my house, and then the number kept growing. And then a couple of years ago, we decided to put together this political action group called TrueCapitalism.org. And we weren't there to raise bazillions of dollars. We were there to get across some ideas and communication and tactic and strategy and how you change it. And in very, very short order, by the grace of God, The next thing you know, people at the Heritage Foundation are taking advice from me in terms of tactic and strategy and communication, how to simplify their messaging. I was asked to join the Wyrick Luncheon, which is an exclusive group of 70 individuals that meet privately in DC on Wednesdays. No cameras, no recording, no video, it's all internal stuff. And I was given carte blanche to speak to the group. I've become a friend of Grover Norquist, who's coming up in a couple of weeks. He's going to be speaking. This week, I met with the National Republican Congressional Committee. I was in John Klein's offices. Eric is my congressman, so Paulson. So somehow, in a very short period of time, I've been very, very well received on a national basis. And I got very concerned, and I wrote this book called The Golden Rules of Capitalism, The Real Way Out of America's Economic Crisis. Now, one of the things that happened in that, and I'm going to get to Hydra in a minute, and this will all start to make sense as we piece things together. But the point I'm trying to make to you is I'm just a regular guy like you. My path may have been a little different along the way. I love people, I love my kids, I love the nation, I've seen the dark side. You don't want to go there. But we're in trouble. We're in a lot of trouble. So I wrote this book, and as I was in and out of DC, because I was there about 1 week, 1.5 weeks a month prior to the election, I was fortunate enough to meet Babe Buchanan. Babe heard me speak at the Wyrick Luncheon. And so we're visiting afterwards. She says, "Could we, get together for coffee?" So I went over to Babe's hometown, and it was going to be a half-an-hour meeting. Turned into a 2.5-hour meeting. "Well, what are you doing?" "Well, I'm doing this. I'm writing this book." She says, "What's the book about?" I told her. She says, "Wow, that's really interesting. What's in it?" And I laid out what the chapters did, and then I said, "But the real solutions are in chapters 16 through 20. And she said, "Can I get a copy of the book?" I said, my editors aren't even done. I don't know, if all the sites are right, and I don't know if the spelling's right. It's just that she says, "Oh, well, that's okay." I said, "Look, we're part of a pack, and we're not." She says, if there's things that we need to know from people that we're not supposed to talk to, we just make them publicly available. I said, "Oh, that's really good. Is your book being publicly available?" I said, "In a couple of weeks." It is good. So I gave her a copy of the book. And this was before the governor had all the votes for getting the presidential nomination. It was before any of the policy statements came out. But for people who knew us back then, if you looked at Governor Romney's economic policies and Paul Ryan's economic policies, great minds must think in the same way, because it sounds a hell of a lot like was in the book. And this was way, way pre-released. So somehow, I don't know how, right place, right time, grace of God, I got placed into these positions to try to impact what's going on. Probably a little too late. I should have started 2 years earlier. But what has happened as a consequence of that, as I've been in and out of DC, I've been asked to come and really make a concerted effort to help in the state of Minnesota in some very, very specific races, and I can't tell you which ones right now. I'm actually leaving the PAC and going to operate as a private citizen. And the PAC will continue with what it's doing under some of the teams and other leaders. But I'm being asked to come around and speak quite a bit on this whole concept of Hydra. So I've done it at the Southwest Tea Party, I did it at the Northwest Tea Party. You guys were very gracious and let me come up today. And hopefully what you'll get out of this is we will move from being kind of a rebel army trying to shoot shotguns at 1.5 miles to arming ourselves with some sniper rifles, getting a whole lot better at knowing how to fix what's going on. Are you up for it? Yes. Okay. All right, so what's the whole idea behind Hydra, right? Well, Hercules was like the Superman of his time, right? And Hercules was the child of Zeus, who was the head god, and an incredible woman who was the most beautiful and wisest and tallest of mortal women. And there's always a problem when mankind gets involved with divinity. Always is. My wife is a national expert in compliance and regulatory law, and Bloomberg Press called her the goddess of it. And I should have known I was in trouble. I mean, it's part of my mythology. But so Hercules had some problems because Zeus's wife, his real wife, was upset with him and gave him all these challenges. So the second challenge that he had was to try and slay Hydra. And Hydra was very terrible. Hydra was venomous. Hydra's breath would knock you down. Hydra had multiple heads. And if you cut off one head, two more emerged. Now, why is this so important to know? Because the conservative movement today, that's what they do. I'm in D.C., I'm over at the Koch brothers institutions, I'm at Heritage, I'm at many of the lobbying groups, and I'm telling you, they work really hard because they're going to stop legislation and they're going to try and shift something going on, and bless all of us for doing it. We have to do that. But what happens is you lop off one head and two more grow in its place. Okay? How many of you were around for global cooling in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember that 3.5 weeks we had in winter 76 and 77 where the high was 15 below? Global cooling, right? Well, now we move to global warming. Global warming has been debunked. You think, wow, we cut off the head. Oh, no, 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 no. Now it's climate change. We're the cause of it. See what I mean about Hydra? So, what did Hercules do? What was he trying to do to make this happen? Okay? Essentially, come on, buddy. Let's go to the next one. Is this shifting for you? What's going on? Don't you love it when it comes together? Hang on, we'll get it with you. There we go. Okay. So he had a problem. How was he going to kill Hydra? Well, he called his nephew over, Aeolus, right? And the nephew says, look, we're not going to kill this because the neck keeps growing new heads. So here's what they decided to do. Hercules was going to lop the head off, and Aeolus was going to have a searing brand, you know, kind of like a hot poker, like a blacksmith would use. And he'd put it on the neck, and he'd burn the neck so that it couldn't grow back again. And eventually, they cut off the last head, and then Hercules did something really smart. He took the venomous blood and put it in his sword, so that anything that he came against, that the very methods that Hydra used for killing the enemies and torturing the people, he had available to him in his own sword. And it made the queen so angry that it went from 10 challenges to 11. Hercules conquered them all. Now let me tell you what the problem is with conservatives. When conservatives run, we run to win, right? We run to win elections. When liberals run, they run to destroy you. And don't get me wrong, they run to destroy you. And even if you win, they will go after destroying you in any way they can afterwards. For them, they're dead serious about this. They are so committed to their belief sets that this is a real war. This is not something you can fix by being nice. We have to be tough. We have to win in a way that we will destroy the necks of this horrid hydra that progressive beliefs have found. There's just no other way around it. Okay, so what does that mean for us in a very, very practical way? Well, certainly It's important, if you know what we're fighting, to figure out when did it start. Well, it started back with Teddy Roosevelt. This is a long, long time ago. Now, I wasn't here. My dad was around. But why do we lose? Well, we lose because, we tend to run with moderate people rather than more hardcore conservatives. The Tea Party has not been embraced by the Republican Party. And that's not just their fault. Some of it's our fault. We get very emotional. We get upset. We get distressed. But we need to elect people that will move the war in our favor. Not believe you can revolutionize 100 years of abuse on this nation in one election. If we're smart and if we work right, it will take 3 or 4 election cycles. There's very, very specific things that we have to do to make it happen. So, conservatives run to win. But there was nearly $1 billion on a federal level poured into this campaign, the last presidential election. Does anyone know of the $1 billion that was poured into the Liberals campaign, into the Progressives campaign? For people that put money into that, does anyone have a guess as to what kind of rate of return they got if they put in $1,000, how much money they got back in favors or grants or contracts? Anyone want to guess? Oh. Someone said 100 what? I've seen estimates as high as 12,000 to 1. $1 billion in campaign stuff brought $1 trillion in preferred benefits. Whether it went to the unions, whether it went to solar, whether it went to green, whether it went to buddies who were going to become ambassadors or whatever. Do you know what the rate of return for the conservative billion was on the election? 0. So do you think that those people are going to be really excited? Do you think Steve Wynn is going to be really excited about pouring $100 million into this again? Or do you think the Koch brothers are going to be really excited about putting $150 million into this again? I don't think so. They're smart businessmen. They want to become smarter with their money. And if we're going to be smarter at using their money, we have to find a way to make $100,000 worth $10 million in return. That's what it's going to take. What was the real purpose, the foundation of the American Revolution? What caused the American Revolution to come about? Taxation without representation. So was it despotism? Was it poor leadership? I mean, in one sense, I guess it was. But this wasn't like they had some sort of a crazy man like Venezuela that caused the American Revolution. The American Revolution came about as the first time there had ever been a true economic war. It was a